First thing I want you to know, I had nothing to do with the quiz. That's your problem, not mine. I'm glad I don't have to read the book. But I am grateful to be here today. This is a little bit different audience than what we're used to facing in the mission field. But I think in some ways it's much the same audience. It was wonderful to hear an opening prayer. When I get to do things like this, I usually don't hear that today. But let me give you a little foreshadow. When we put our partnership together 21 years ago, we made a couple of decisions. One of those decisions was that every partnership meeting would start with prayer. Now, you may not be able to do that. But I would tell you that if you can, you're going to be ahead of the game. And if you can't, and you're in a partnership, you better say one before you go in. Having the Lord on your side and being aware of the direction of His Spirit does nothing but help you in business. Now, a lot of the time, our Heavenly Father doesn't I probably shouldn't say it that way. Whatever you decide to do, He can use your talents and what you grow to become. So involve Him in the process. Seems pretty simple to me. Now, clicker is here. Our company, Western States Lodging, as I said, started 21 years ago with 5 of us. I don't know at the time that we were thinking about necessarily what our highest priorities were, but from the first slide here, whatever you do, remember why you're doing it. If what you do defines who you are, if I'm only successful in life because I'm successful in business, you're looking at a real depression waiting to happen. Remember what you do. If I can ask, how many of you here have served a mission in the last 10 years? Just show me a hand. Most of you, wow. Most of you then went through Preach My Gospel, right? What did you do? How did you do your missionary work and Preach My Gospel? What defined what you were trying to do every day? Investigators, okay. What else? Purpose. I heard purpose. That's right. Beyond purpose, purpose led to a missionary. What did you have to do every preparation day for the next week? You got to talk louder than that. I can't hear you. Nobody got an idea? Everything you did, wasn't it defined by the goals you set? You had to report every week against your goals. Some of you had the joy of having to call into your district leader every day on your goals. Business is the same. And so with this slide, remember what your ultimate goal is. Everything you do every day ought to be driven by one of your goals, just like it was in the mission field. Okay, let me go on. Western States Lodging, there's some bullets about what we do. We started off as a development and management company. 3 of the 5 partners come out of Marriott, and that's what Marriott did, was hotels and senior living. So we focused in those. We've developed a lot of properties over the years. We currently manage mostly Marriott and Hilton franchise properties, as well as our own brand of senior living. If you've driven out on University Avenue to the north towards the canyon, there's a big new senior living facility being developed there called Legacy. That's us. That's what we do. We are growing faster today than we ever have. That 1,800 employees, probably within 2 years, will be over 3,000 employees. It's a long ways from a guy who, when he started, thought it'd be nice to have 4 hotels to manage and less than 100 employees. You change and you adapt. I'm going to go through my background and my experience, and there's some points to this, and I hope they'll make sense to you. I started here, not in this building, it was in the old building over there. That tells you how long ago it was, in accounting. just like today, it was tough back then. I remember getting up at 6:30 in the morning, going over to the MTC, studying till 7:30, teaching at the MTC from 7:30 to 11:30, going to class from 11:30 to 5, and then studying from 5 till midnight. That was after I was married and got through the dating side. But that's what you have to do here. The thing about accounting, and I wouldn't encourage any of you to go into accounting. I got out of it as soon as I could. But the good thing about accounting is this: no matter what you do, you're going to have to deal with that element of finance, cash, and money. I have a son-in-law, chemical engineer, works in mines out in Nevada. Has to deal with making budget on his projects. Have a civil engineer son-in-law, he's in the Navy in Singapore. He deals with budgets every day. The nice thing about accounting is it allows you, I got to stay on this side, huh? It allows you to understand the language of every business. As I go through my background here, I worked for Arthur Andersen as an auditor in natural gas transmission pipelines, Utah Cancer Society, U.S. Ski Team, a construction company, a resort company, a hotel company. It gave me the opportunity to understand all of that. Now, why I'm saying that is, I understand only half of you in here perhaps are business majors. The other half of you don't neglect an accounting class or finance classes. Because I guarantee you, no matter what you do, you're going to have to deal with it. When I worked for Marriott, we had some incredible chefs. I mean, they could cook things that, well, there's a reason I look the way I do. But they weren't successful, all of them inside Marriott. And the reason why was they couldn't read a financial statement and make a profit in their restaurant or in their catering department. They weren't successful, even though they were fantastic chefs. So, don't leave that behind. Next, I went to Arthur Andersen on the audit track. That's a now defunct, sued out of business, Big 8 accounting firm. The nice thing about being with Arthur Andersen was simply, I saw lots of different businesses. Don't be afraid to do something that's different than what you've lined yourself into. Because the more experience you have, the better off you're going to be. One of my clients led me to my next job, which was Deer Valley Resort Company. Now, when you think of Deer Valley, what do you think of? What comes to your mind? Shout it out loud.
High society.
See? High society. What else? What? High society. Why does high society go there?
It's the most expensive resort in the world.
Most expensive in the world. Most expensive, typically in people's mind, equates to what? Luxury, the best. And Deer Valley was that way. I can remember I ran their accounting department. I can remember Roger Penske coming in as he'd come for his 2 or 3 week vacation with his family. He'd walk into the financial office and he'd shell out $100 bills onto the desk. And he'd say, when I run through these, call me, let me know, I'll bring you some more. Ultimately became an investor and then the owner of Deer Valley Resort Company. What I learned at Deer Valley was that concept of customer service and customer satisfaction. Most expensive resort in the world. You pay more there than you do anything else, and I guarantee you when Bob Wheaton sits down and they set their rates for next year, one of the things they look at is what's Alta, Snowbird, the Canyons, and Park City charging, and we're going to charge more than they do. And the reason they get away with it is they're better at it than anybody else. You know, you got the little Kleenex as you ski up to the line. The guys bump the chair so it doesn't hit you in the back. All of that. The runs are cut a little bit more into the fall line. It's all about customer satisfaction. That got reinforced later on inside Marriott, but the next place I went was a company called Stott Inc. That was a structural steel fabricator and erection company. Those guys that stick the steel in the air, shimmy up the columns. I was their chief financial officer. It gave me an introduction into the construction industry. I hope there aren't any construction management students in here, but I'll tell you that's a tough business. And it's not always the most ethical of businesses. I ran into a situation with Stott where on Monday there wasn't enough money in the bank to cut paychecks. We had no way to cover. The owner of the company came in to me and he said, "You sign the paychecks, send them out, I'll figure out a way to cover it." Well, this is the same owner who had, not very many months before, taken $40,000 out of the business and gone to Vegas to gamble. Now, in fairness, by Thursday, he had money in to cover payroll. Had he not, by me signing the paychecks, I could have been liable and gone to jail. I guess my takeaway for you is when you go to work for somebody, don't just go in on the interview having done enough research to say what you think they want to hear, but go in and do enough research so that you can decide if this is a company you want to work for. Is it where I want to spend my life? Does it fit with my ultimate long-term goals? And know what you're getting into. If you're going to work as a broker on Wall Street, that's great. You have the opportunity to make a tremendous amount of money in a fairly quick time frame. Any idea what the potential problem with that is? Nobody? How many hours a week do you work? 120, maybe on the bottom end. And what's the problem with that with a wife and family? Now, I'm not telling you shouldn't go do that, but what I am telling you is you better be aware of it and have a plan to deal with it. For me, what was going on in that construction company meant I had to leave. And so I went looking for a company where I felt like I would never again have to question my own ethics. That was Marriott International. I walked through the door in the hotel, downtown Salt Lake City, asked to see the controller and said, "I'd like to come to work for you. What's that? The possibility of getting a job." And within 6 weeks, I was working for Marriott. Marriott, I learned some other things. I brought with me, we have in our company what we call the Milking Stool. Okay? Simple, 3 legs of the stool. The 3 legs, each one of those signify something, okay? First leg is investor satisfaction. Now, for Marriott, that was their stock price. They were a growth stock, and the only thing that brought people to buy into Marriott was the probability of that stock price increasing. You have to take care of those people who invest in your business. I don't care if it's real estate, I don't care if it's tech. I saw that slide about scaling a business. The way you scale a business, you got to have the financial resources to do that. You have to service those resources. That's one leg of the stool. Second leg of the stool is customer satisfaction. Go back to Deer Valley. They can charge what they charge because they deliver. and people love it. Well, let me hold that for a second. Third leg of the stool is associate or employee satisfaction. We spend a lot of time in our company on understanding what drives our associates and trying to help them feel like they're fulfilled. Now, it's an interesting dichotomy in our business. Senior business, hotel business. The people who interact with our guests and our residents the most are the people we pay the least. Figure that one out. But that's the way it works. I hire a CNA, that CNA makes 10 to 12 bucks an hour. That's the person that goes in and provides care to the senior that's there. When you walk into a hotel, how often do you interact with the general manager? Usually only if there's a problem and it's escalated to the point that you have to deal with them. Who you usually deal with is the front desk clerk, right? I'm paying a front desk clerk that same 10 to 12 bucks an hour. So how do I then go about making sure that 10 to 12 buck an hour employee is happy and happy with delivering service? It's a question that most of you will have to answer at some point as you manage people. When I went to work for Marriott, we started here in Salt Lake City. Before the second year anniversary hit, well, let me back up a step. I came in laterally. I was a CPA. That was very unusual for Marriott. I had, I don't know how many years of experience at that point, 10 years experience outside. Very different and atypical for their hotel controllers program. And because of that, it was pretty easy to stand out. Ended up being the controller of the year. Now, the only reason I mention that is because having won that award got me noticed. And within 2 years, I was approached by Marriott saying, we're going to open a hotel in Warsaw, Poland. Now remember, this is 1988. This is before the wall came down. Would you consider taking your family and moving to Poland for at least 2 years behind the Iron Curtain? I went home, said to my wife, you know, Marriott has an international assignment for us. We talked about going to Cancun and working in one of the hotels in Cancun. She was pretty excited about that. And I said, well, the problem is it's not Cancun. It's Warsaw. You should have seen the look on her face. You can ask her about that later. You have to be willing to be flexible. We said yes. So we went, 5 kids, the youngest 6 months old, behind the Iron Curtain. Everything was fine until we hit the border crossing into East Germany. And back then, when you went across the border, it was concertina wire and machine guns. Again, you should have seen the look on her face. But that flexibility probably is what gave us the ability and the belief that we could start our own business. When we went into Poland, nothing worked. You know, if you start a business here, there's usually 10 guys, or I'm using that in the generic sense, ready to sell you whatever you need. Well, if you ever go international, just be prepared. It doesn't work the way it works here. And especially in Poland at that time, we couldn't find anything. We imported seeds and hired farmers to grow herbs for us. We had to import beef out of the United States because all the beef that was all of the good cuts of beef produced in Poland were shipped out for export. It was owned by the government. Just one little story to tell you about flexibility. When we opened the hotel, This is a 44-story tower, 20 stories of office space, and then 24 stories of hotel rooms above it. This was put in, the hotel opened with a telephone switch that had been purchased in 1977. One of those old mechanical, monstrosities. It was one of the banes of our existence. And we couldn't figure out, because we didn't have the money, how the heck we could get a modern digital telephone switch. Not only do we not have the money, but it was against the law for the United States to export that technology into the Eastern Bloc. So we kept talking about this. And finally, one day it occurred to me, I had 20 stories of office space, fully leased, with a waiting list of over 40 companies trying to get in, because we were the best. This telephone switch took up 300 square meters in a prime corner on the 3rd floor of the office tower. I went down my list of people who were waiting until I found one that was willing to pay us a year in advance, $1 million, to have that space. That's what the price of the telephone switch was. Get out of the box. Be flexible. Got us a telephone switch and cemented a competitive advantage that couldn't be repeated by anybody else in the country. Now, in order to put that in, we had to have a digital link to the country's backbone telephone system. So I go into the Ministry of Telecommunications, I meet with the Vice Minister, and he looks at me and he says, "That'll be great, we're going to put you on fiber, it'll take 6 months." Isn't there anything we can do to shorten that time frame to get it to you? He says, "Yeah, there's another company in town that we've approved to do business. They can probably get you the design in a couple of weeks, and then we can put it in." Great, get the business card. Secretary makes appointment. We go over to this company's office. We walk in to the president's door, and it's the Vice Minister of Telecommunications sitting on the other side of the desk. Now, in Poland at that time, there were no conflict of interest laws. We were not doing anything illegal, immoral, or unethical. Now, I had to go back and check that with an attorney. Be flexible. Get out of the box. Paid him $5,000. We had the design the next week. The switch was in about a month and a half. Sustainable competitive advantage. Okay, so some comments about flexibility. I got to hustle here. Feasibility. My last 2 years with Marriott after Poland, I moved back to Washington, D.C., and I did international feasibility. I would go out to Brussels or Rio or any one of a number of different sites in the world for the purpose of saying, okay, can Marriott put a hotel here? That was tremendous in terms of both education and knowledge of how to decide whether or not to start a business. And once we started, where do we build a hotel? Where do we build a senior building? Understanding everything that went into that process became very important. And as you get into whatever business you're in, don't just do the job that's in front of you. Learn everything you can about the business you're working for. There will be some of you here who will go through the entrepreneurship program, who will come up with an idea, win awards, and start a project. But I dare say there probably aren't very many fiber fixes in this room. Most of you are going to do what I did. You're going to get your degree, you're going to go to work for somebody. Great. Learn everything you can from wherever you're at. Every step of the way here ultimately prepared me for Western States Lodging. I was prepared. I had the belief, because what we had done in Poland, that I could go out and start a business. I had the background to be able to evaluate what it would take to be able to put that business plan into operation and do it successfully. only because of everything that I had learned up to that point. Don't discount whatever your situation may be. Okay. Partnership. Partnership is perhaps the most difficult business ownership possibility you will ever begin. Most partnerships don't last very long. Ours has lasted 21 years. Let's see, I think I've got, this is what we looked like 21 years ago. And here we are today. Things have changed a little, but that's okay. Let me talk about some principles of partnership if I can. If you're going to get into a partnership, number one, you better check your ego at the door. I learned a great lesson. Elder Bednar came to our mission, talked to the missionaries, and stayed with us for 3 days. Incredible opportunity for my wife and I to ask him questions, to really learn from a tremendous educator and a businessman. One of the things we asked him was, how does it feel to be an apostle? I mean, you walk in the room, what does everybody do? Everybody stands up. Everybody listens intently, pen prepared, to an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. What Elder Bednar said to us was, I have to remember it's not about me. It's about the apostleship. That's separate from me. One of the things that makes a partnership successful is it's not about me. I don't care who has the best idea. I don't care particularly who goes and gets the job done. It just needs to be done. It's not about me. If you'll do that, you'll find your partnership or your investment into partnerships, that's going to be more successful. Get your priorities right. Now, that's a tough one. Scott and I were talking about that coming through the door. I'm not going to tell you how you should do this, but you have lots of different things you have to balance in your life. If you're married today, you got school, you got family. Even if you're not, you still got family. Maybe not just as committed. You have church responsibilities, you have social responsibilities or social desires. You got to balance all of that. Remember where your priorities are. Again, back to that. What are my goals? Third concept, worry about you, not the other guy. Now, especially in real estate, you're out and about. You're checking on construction. You're working with a manager in a property. I need to not worry about what the other guy's doing. I need to have the faith in him that he's working as hard as I am. And then I just need to worry about me. Am I doing my part or more than my part? Get the right people on the bus. Now, this can be difficult because you may not know your partners, but if you do, make sure you have the talent pool among you and the desire so that you can put your business or your development on the right track. Engineers are wonderful people. I have a son-in-law who's one, and forgive me, you engineers in the audience. But if all you've got on your team is just engineers, and you're going to start a business, and not one of them wants to deal with customers, not one of them wants to deal with employees, and none of them wants to deal with financing or the bank, you're probably not going to be very successful. Get the right people on the bus. For us, we had operations guys, we had construction guys, we had finance guys, we had people who We're visionaries, people who are better at execution. So, get the right people. Flexibility, we've talked about. Business structure, private fundraising. You know what? I'm going to leave that for a minute, and then I'll come back to it. One of the keys in your business is not going to be not only what you know, but who you know. I was standing here earlier. One of the students in the prior class came up and said, Scott, hey, will you give me a recommendation? It's who you know. Scott can give him a pretty good recommendation. Network out. Not just amongst your peers, but at every opportunity with anyone who you can learn from, or maybe even, to putting it a little bit more crassly, anyone who may be able to introduce you to the money you need for your business. One of the greatest reasons for failure, correct me if I'm wrong, in a business is insufficient cash. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I always say the first three most important principles are number one, cash flow, number two, cash flow, number three, cash flow. If you're out of cash, you're out of business.
It's pretty simple. But I guarantee you, most of you will, if you start a business, it'll be on the proverbial shoestring. Make sure that shoestring is long enough, or that you know somebody who's got a longer shoestring. If you don't, then you're going to be like the chef who went and opened his restaurant, and at the end of the first month, couldn't pay his employees and he was out of business. Just don't do it. Okay. The ability to tell the tale. I could spend a week on this. What this is simply is, if I'm going to start a business, I've got to be able to convince others that that business is A, going to make them money, and B, be successful. Now, I said that, I think, in the right order. Because to get people to put money, I can remember going to meet an investor at Thanksgiving Point. I'm driving a 15-year-old Honda. He pulls up in his Lexus. The look on his face was kind of... But I was able to go inside and tell the tale about this hotel I wanted him to invest in, how he was going to make a return on his money, and why he should invest in me. Now notice I didn't say invest in a hotel, I said invest in me. It's more about you in real estate at the beginning than it is about the asset that you're getting into. You've got to be able to tell the tale so that they're going to want to invest in you. That sounds like a carnival hawker, but it really is true to a certain extent. If you have ever, or if you ever have the opportunity to sit in on a pitch, well, how many of you have watched Shark Tank? Anybody? Oh, let me tell you, there's some realism in there. And they ask tough questions. I don't know, maybe some of you do. For every minute that gets on air, how many minutes are there outside? I suspect it's probably a 5-to-1 ratio, where those investors are talking to and grilling those potential companies or individuals. Okay. Know your idea, know the numbers, part of telling the tale. You better be able to convince them that you've got everything covered. There's nothing coming that's uncertain. And then know your audience. Why know your audience? You help me here. Why would I put that slide in? What do you think? Why do you have to know your audience you're trying to sell to?
Sometimes they have past experiences that would decide whether they would invest.
Okay, past experience. Why else? Tell me the rest of you.
I feel like you wouldn't want to waste your time. Like, you wouldn't want to pitch to a 10-year-old girl who you should pitch to their parents.
Okay? That's right. It's pretty tough for me to pitch a hotel investment to a guy who's lost his investment in a prior hotel. I better be prepared for that. And I've run into that. Why else do I need to know my audience?
I think it's important to understand, especially cultural differences, if you're working internationally, that you don't say something offensive, that might not be offensive to you, but perhaps offensive in some other way.
Absolutely. I remember going over to Poland being very nervous about the fact that we didn't drink alcohol. And everything they do, at the end of it, there's a toast. It's always vodka. And so we talked about how we were going to handle that without being offensive. Well, it became easier for us because guess what? We catered all of the events. And so I briefed the maitre d' before the first event. Now listen, I know you normally bring vodka, you bring orange juice for my wife and I. First event, before the toast, I see him across the room. He comes out with 2 glasses of orange juice on his tray, headed for us. It took him, I don't know how many trips, 8 trips, before he ever got to us with the orange juice, because people took it. It wasn't vodka. They were happy. They weren't having to drink. So know your culture. Very good one. Okay? All right. Here's the takeaways. Whatever you do can prepare you for what's going to come next. We used to tell the missionaries, and I'll tell you this, many of you return missionaries, most of what you're going to face in life, you're going to be able to look back at your mission and find an experience that relates. Having a problem with your spouse? How many of you didn't have problems with your companions? Guess what? Same principles apply. Service, love, forbearance, understanding, same thing. What?
Unselfishness.
Unselfishness. All of that applies. Learn from whatever you have because you never know when it's going to come into play. Next takeaway. Be prepared for the stress. When we left Marriott Corporation and started our business, I think we had $300,000 in savings. That was 20 years ago. That was our nest egg. Before we brought home enough paychecks to sustain us, anybody want to guess how much we had left? Less than $50,000. Talk about stressful. Some of you want to start your own business, but man, that just eats you alive. So be prepared for it. And there's nothing wrong with being the guy or the gal who just earns a paycheck. That's not a problem. Just be the best at that. But if you're going to go out and onto your own, be prepared for the extra stress. How am I going to survive? Make sure the shoestring's long enough. We used to ask a question, I used to ask a question in my departing interview with the missionaries. The question would go something like this. What are you going to remember, or what's going to stand out for you the most about this 2 years of your life? And I can remember the first 2 or 3 groups where I asked that question. I kind of expected, oh, hated tracking in the rain. Oh, man, it was cold here. Oh, some of those people were terrible. It was interesting. I never once heard any of that. Instead, what I heard was, I'm going to remember the people. I'm going to remember the people I baptized. I'm going to remember the people that I didn't. The more you go on in your lives and careers, the more that you will realize it really is about people. Most of the discussions we have as partners today are about our associate employee base. What can we do to help them be successful? It's all about people. don't forget the stool. If you don't remember anything else today, don't forget the stool. Investor satisfaction, customer satisfaction, associate satisfaction. That, you lose one leg of the milking stool, what happens? Then you're going to get kicked by the cow. Don't do that. Okay. I've got another section I want to go through, and I'll do that fairly quickly on a live real estate deal. But at this point, any questions you want to ask? Sorry? Anybody? Okay. There's some pros and cons about real estate. It's a tangible asset. You can reach out it. I can touch the walls. I can feel it. There are tax advantages, depreciation. I get to shield my income. Inevitably, someday I have to pay the tax, but I can tell you it was great. First 10 years that we had income, we never paid any tax because we had enough depreciation. It's wonderful. Now it's going the other way. You get strong returns. Typically, you put money in the bank, you'll get 0.25% today. In a CD, 1 or 2%. Real estate goes a lot further than that. Cons, it's not liquid. You're not going to get your cash out. You have perhaps more risk than many other types of businesses. In hotels, we make money hand over fist when business is good. But I can tell you in 2010, the money went out as fast as it came in 2008. Be prepared. Some steps to successful real estate. Asset type becomes pretty critical. Location, feasibility, can I make money at it? Design and entitlement. I'm skipping through this pretty quick. The reason I put that up there is, for us, a project like the one I'm going to show you in just a minute is potentially 18 months from start to when the building opens, and then after that, 18 to 30 months before it produces any cash. Part of that is it just takes that long to get through the governmental approvals. Okay. Let me go on here. In 2012, this is a picture of a field in Hillsboro, Oregon. Sits along the 26 highway going out to the ocean. Hilton contacted us and said, we think this is a great site for a hotel. There's been a company who's been trying to do it. They haven't been successful. Would you consider taking this over? We went up, looked at it, did some study, and said, sure. Let's see if I can. Okay, I'm running out of time. That construction looks like this today. Now, I show you that for two reasons. Number one, it's kind of fun. Number two, if I walk into an investor and show him that, does he believe I can build a hotel? Don't forget marketing all the time, no matter what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to go through, I think you've got these slides so people can look at them. This is the cost side of hotel development. That hotel that you just saw is a $35 million hotel. Everything that we could possibly spend money on, we have in that construction cost breakdown. Notice the second to the bottom line there, over $1 million in contingency. You better believe that there are things going to come at you that you don't expect. Quick example, we budgeted $65,000 in legal costs. Total legal costs came in at over $250,000. Be prepared. You need to know what your costs are going to be and have some slush for the rest. Once you have the cost side down, then you've got to develop the revenue side. This is an example of a pro forma. Top line to bottom line, net operating income in our case equals cash. The financing side. In real estate, you don't get to go borrow all of the money from the bank. Today, you're looking at 65% loan to cost to 75. And then the deal. For us to be able to attract investors in this project to invest $12 million, we had to promise them over 10 years a 26% annual return on their money. That's what it takes. And then we have to eke out a little bit for ourselves. Okay, break. For any of you who want to stay, I guess we do questions after.
We're going to do Q&A up there. So for any of you who can stay, we're going up to 7:10 and have some refreshments. Let's give them a hand.